Welcome to the Film Realist Podcast, the film and TV podcast from a complete nobody that's hopefully for somebody. I'm again joined by a somebody because the episodes are more interesting when it's not just me, Kyle Naranya. I am joined by Rob Keys of Screenrant.com. Hello, Rob.
Hello. You put yourself down too much, man. What do you mean?
It's in the realm of entertainment. I remember, Ryan from a previous show, he used to say, we know professionals, but we're professionals as opposed to amateurs. Nobody's paying me for this. I only do it because of my love of movies and TV. So
right. Well, you know my history. I agree with that. I mean, if the driver and the through point is passion, that is the ultimate product, right? Mm-hmm. And I would argue that makes you the most of a somebody versus a nobody, or whatever you were saying.
Yeah. I mean, but I think in general, the reason I came up with that was everybody in general is a somebody to somebody. But some people are nobody to somebody. So I don't know. It's relative to other stuff, not necessarily how I feel about myself. More about the realm to which I'm so passionate about.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll say you are very professional. You were very well organized, and you were very talented at hosting podcasts. And I love chatting with you, which is why I'm here. And I'm so thankful you've invited me multiple times. Sometimes I couldn't make it, but I'm happy to be here talking about another big release, I guess.
A big release, yes. This was probably the biggest one that I was leading up to. Housekeeping, if you're listening to this, I took all of January off, just mental health break, and there was really nothing outside of Mathregan. But there's been a lot of DC stuff, the Super Bowl trailers, which was on last week's episode with Stephen Colbert. But yes, we are starting Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is what Rob and I are going to talk about today. I'm grateful that this hasn't happened yet on your own podcast, Podcast X, where we're going to go through all of Phase 4. If you want to hear my opinions on the whole thing, I did a tier list episode with the release of the holiday special last year. And so we're going to go through that with Rob. He's already done it. I did watch him do it. And I'm going to say it's kind of all over the place. So I'm looking forward to discussing that, as well as the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 Super Bowl trailer, which just didn't have enough time last week. If people were looking for that piece of content last week, I'm really sorry, but it was a pretty DC-packed episode, and I wound up talking to Steven for about 25 minutes on Fast Furious X, which I was not expecting. So that stuff is all on last week's. Here's what's coming up on this week's. Let's get into Rob's tier list of Phase 4 of the MCU. So starting off with, we're going from release to, or a date of release to, so from WandaVision all the way through to Guardians of the Galaxy, the holiday special, as I mentioned earlier. So Rob has some things made. I'm going to release an image at the end of this.
No. I'm still moving stuff. I couldn't fit it all.
I know.
So many releases.
I did not think this through. It's a Google slide. This official tier list was not available specifically on Tier Maker, which was a little frustrating. So that's why it's set up like this. So WandaVision, is it in its final place?
So I guess that would be the first Phase 4 release, and also the debut of sort of
the Disney Plus content. Yes.
Yeah, Marvel Studios content on Disney Plus and Disney Plus content. This was January
of 2021. Yeah.
Wait, 2021 or 2020?
2021.
Was it?
Yes, because Disney Plus launched in November of 2019 with The Mandalorian.
So that would make this 2020, wouldn't it?
I don't believe so.
Am I losing my mind here? Because Endgame was 2019. Hang on a second. Or maybe you're right.
Yeah, January 15th. And time is relative, and it seems like it was longer ago. So that's fine. So
this is 2021.
Yeah.
January. And right now it's 2023.
Yes, that is currently.
So we saw all of this stuff in the last 2 years.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yes. Oh, jeez. No wonder why so much of it's mediocre.
Spoilers! I know that somebody has compiled, I believe it was IGN, shout out, a list of runtime for the phases, and it's something like 8 hours, 10 hours, 14 hours from 1, 2, and 3. And then for Phase 4, it's something like 60.
Oh, boy.
So, which is honestly, from my standpoint, the most frustrating, because I did do rewatches for things leading up to specific milestone events of Phase 3. And then with Phase 4, it kind of became impossible as it went along. Like you could do, and we talked about this, I think, early on in the show, about how each kind of pocket of the Disney Plus era, it was going to connect to specific things with the actual films. So that made, you could potentially, like, all you needed to rewatch before Doctor Strange, which we'll get to, was WandaVision and hit the Doctor Strange content, as opposed to rewatching everything. But I don't think I'm going to be rewatching all of this because I barely have time for the stuff I have now. Anyways, so you have WandaVision in a B. Is that a high B, or is it just because it was better than average?
At the time, it was pretty good. We were all hooked. I mean, you know me, like, not to delve into the whole, binge watch versus weekly release thing, but I am a big proponent of consumer choice and binging. This was the first example of like Marvel getting into, well, TV, but also like doing the episodic release for Marvel Studios content. So it was strange. And if you remember, after the first 2 or 3 episodes, some of these episodes were short, like clocking
They were
30 or under
sitcom
minutes.
episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's tough to wait weekly, and especially when it's a show that took an ambitious approach to having a different format and so much mystery behind it, and especially following the events of the Avengers 3 and 4. So there was a lot of like hype, and rightfully so. Week to week, they played with audience expectations in a big way, which I think in some ways worked to their benefit, obviously for hype. In other ways, it backfired because they underdelivered in so many things. But even on the things that were straightforward, and we don't have to get into a character breakdown for every one of these 55,000 shows in Marvel Phase 4. But if you remember, like, was that Damage Control? Was that the unit that was there? Or is it
Yes, it was.
Sword or Damage? I forget
It was
what
Sword. It was Sword.
Yeah. Man, what a misuse of that. It felt, every time they were on screen, it felt like watching the worst parts of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Where you have this completely amateur-esque and cheaply shot and cheaply written like government agency, which doesn't fit the tone of anything else at all. And it's just not quality storytelling. And the leader of that, Hayward, or director Tyler Hayward, like was so ridiculous. And it felt like this has to be a front for something else. And it wasn't. He was just a terrible, poorly written character. And that was straight up the role. And it's like, you can't do that. You can't have these like A-tier amazing talents in Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany who were like, working their ass off playing like such weird versions of the characters. And there's so much emotion and depth to what they're doing and layers to it. And then you have that. But on the flip side, they introduced Catherine Hahn, who everyone loves, and is getting a spinoff. And Paris, what's it? Tiana Paris is playing Monica Rambeau, is finally coming back to the big screen now this November, thanks to a delay. That's awesome. But yeah, the Damage Control stuff, and then the bait and switch at the end with the Evan Peters stuff, and I think you and I made jokes about like the Power Rangers-esque final battle, and it just felt.
Catherine Hahn is essentially playing Rita Repulsa.
That's it, yeah, and it's like another amazing talent. Was a kind of a cool twist, but then he's got goofy, and as soon as we saw that flashback sequence with her origin story and the witches, it felt like a CW show. And you mix that with the ABC Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. of it all, and it's like you can't have this like cinematic quality, ambitious stuff, and then such poor, cheap stuff on the side. It just felt, for the budget they spent and how much this meant, maybe B is too high when I think back on it, But again, it was so special at the time, and there was some cool stuff. What you got to give them credit for doing the whole like sitcom format and jumping time periods with that. That's cool, and you never would have expected that 2 years prior, right? So, but it's fun, and it's a highly recommended watch, and you kind of need to watch it with what comes later in Phase 4 for certainly Olsen's character, but what will come later with Paul Bettany's new vision, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say a B is a pretty fair bet. It's pretty good, but has some major failings in there. So, what was after that?
The next release, we obviously, because I don't think listeners would be shocked, we were in lockdown times, so there was a lot of TV before we got to a film. So the next television series, which ironically had a pandemic storyline that had to be cut because is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and shout out to Molly Freeman. At the end of it was called Captain America and the Winter Soldier. In the end,
that's right.
I should preface this, there's going to be spoilers for all of Phase 4. So if you have not seen any of this, I'm sorry. But we're in Phase 5 now. We've moved on. So you have Falcon and the Winter Soldier between C and D.
Yeah, this is this is not like up there with WandaVision. I like the main characters for the most part, and I like that they went for it into introducing Wyatt Russell's U.S. agent or whatever. Is that what he's called? I forgot.
U.S.
Just losing
agent,
my mind
yes.
here.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that he's like. It's funny, and I knew this reaction was going to happen. Everyone online hated him, but it's like you're supposed to hate him. He is not Steve Rogers. That's the whole point. He's the guy who goes too far. He went through the real military system, and there are repercussions for what he went through and experienced. But in his head, and this is why he's an interesting character, even though he's doing things that can be terrible at times, and we see very visceral versions of that. In his head, he's trying to do right by people. And even when at the end, when he's out and he's failed, he's still trying to save the day in his own weird way. So that's an interesting character of like the army guy who's like still trying, but he's rough around the edges, but now he's got these abilities. So that's kind of a cool character to play off of someone who's coming at the opposite direction, which is Bucky Barnes, right? And it's like, you're going to hopefully see them together soon. And, Thunderbolts or whatever, the new Captain, whatever's coming up, which there's still some questions about what characters are actually showing up here and there in the future. But I think that's interesting because he's going from a semi-villain as past and trying to do right and learn from Steve. And this guy's trying to be Steve and he's not quite there. So it's kind of neat. But I also like Anthony Mackie finally getting some time to shine. I like that they went full bore and gave him the suit from the comics with the colors and everything. I still think from the comics, the idea of the wings and shield together is ridiculous, but it is what it is, and they honor the comics.
He should have I don't know if you remember this, but like the Mighty Ducks toys had like the puck launchers on their fists, or to go even further back,
yeah, I have one of those.
The Ninja Turtles had the pizza launcher on the turtle wagon. He should have like a shield launcher on his back, because the fact that he like throws it, I thought
it's silly.
It's so dumb.
I have a problem with that. In the comic, it's ridiculous. The shield is the iconography of Captain America, so I understand it. But Mackie's character in the MCU is not a super soldier. And I feel like you need super soldier strength to wield a vibranium weapon like that. Mm-hmm. But also, they never went the extra step and introduced any technology behind the vibranium to make it function the way it does. The way it bounces and returns to the user. Like, it's a special metal, but it's not supposed to be magical. Maybe it is. I don't know. But the way it returns to the user, the way it catches it, like it's supposed to, it should, if he tries to catch that, it should just break his arms or cut right through him. Yeah, it should.
Well, and we've seen it do that in a upcoming movie we're going to talk about.
Right. So like it's exactly. And so it is absurd that they break the rules. This bothered me back in phase 1 when we talked about it back in the old Screenrant Underground podcast. And it's like, I wish they addressed that. And it was such simple fixes. Just have like some little Stark tech on there. No problem. But no, they didn't play that right. But to answer your question about the shield pizza shooter launcher on the back, he's got the drone back there still. So I assume.
What is his name?
Riley. No, did they call it Riley? No, it's Red.
Red Wing.
Red Wing. That's it.
Red
yeah.
Wing.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, and like you said, you hinted at it. The initial storyline for this was very pandemic and vaccine based, and they had to change that last minute because we were in the midst of COVID-19 spreading everywhere and lockdown. So they kind of did what they could and scrapped it, salvaged whatever story bits they could, but it ended up having kind of unclear villains and kind of weird plotting, and
it might have the most confusing finale, I think, of any of these shows.
And then you got the Captain America speech at the end there too.
Yeah, well, that falls under something that I got into specifically with the first movie we're going to get to very shortly with Black Widow, which is there is a certain maturity of content that they could be covering, given the fact that, and they do address it to some degree with a Black American taking on this iconic role, right? And we also have, my brain is now mush, the previous guy who was Captain America.
Yeah. Isaiah.
Isaiah.
Isaiah Bradley. Oh, geez. I
think it's Isaiah Bradley, right? So they, to say tease would, I think, sounds disingenuous, but that level of the disparity into what it means to take on that role is like surface level, which is unfortunate. And the same sort of stuff could have been addressed with Black Widow, with women losing their agency and having to follow the autonomy of a man. Like, that's some really great mature subject matter that does not get treated in such a way, which is unfortunate. Like, we've talked about this on and off all the time, and maybe we'll get to it. I mean, we'll get to it. The Americans,
Yeah.
but so the next crazy thing that might finally matter to the MCU is Loki season 1, which you have
Yeah.
in B as well.
Yeah, again, this was highs and lows. This is almost there. Kind of like WandaVision was almost there. This one was cool too. This one felt like, compared to the first two, like a very high production values, especially in the latter episodes. They really went for it. The first episode's a little unsure. I was kind of excited by the idea of this X-Files partnership in TV and time travel, but I felt like they really fumbled the bag in explaining the rules of the multiverse and time travel, like even down to the Infinity Stones. If you watch any of the films where they talk about the Infinity Stones, starting with Guardians 1, and then you watch Endgame, and then how they use it and explain it there, and then you watch this, and then you try to watch What If, like they do not have a proper canon for how Infinity Stones work within or outside of their universe. It just does not make sense.
They still don't have
contradict
a
themselves.
time travel rules. That was for when I was watching Loki, and I ranked it very low on mine, which was when they outright say, this is what a multiverse is, and these are what variants are. I'm like, that's not how most like pop culture fans have accepted what that is at all. But okay. And then in the final episode, they go, well, actually, it's this. I'm like, oh, okay. The best thing Loki did, in my opinion, was Jonathan Majors, which obviously we're going to get to with Antman and the Wasp: Quantumania. So
Yes, the ending tag of introducing Majors was very, very exciting because they actually went for it, and they finally kind of made it one of these shows really, really, really matter. Like not just because of the characters continuing or characters being introduced, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but a major story thread, and a new character that's designed specifically to be like a huge thing, which we'll talk about later. Yes, there's also little things that annoy me too, like the TVA stuff is really goofy. It's very unclear on what they're doing and how and why. And then I give you this is a weird thing that I called out, but it drives me crazy. In the 4th or 5th episode, I think it's the 4th, maybe it's Sylvie and Loki, and they think they're going to die, like their worlds are colliding or whatever. And they're sitting beside each other and they're having like a moment, and it's cold outside. And then I think Loki says like, "Oh, is it cold?" And he summons, using his powers, a blanket to put over them. Right? Think about that. He summons a blanket because he feels cold. He just shakes his arms. He's a frost giant. He never feels cold. He wasn't cold at all when he went to the frost giant realm in the first movie. So in my head, I was like, oh, what a smart, subtle thing the writers did to show us that Loki is still, even this Loki, especially this Loki, because it's right after the events of the first Avengers where he's pure evil. Mm-hmm. He's manipulating her. This is what Loki does. Both of them should be manipulating each other. Why would they ever trust each other? Why would they not manipulate each other? They are the gods of mischief, and they are inherently, naturally selfish. This is what they would do. But nope, that was just a complete error, and they are totally in love or whatever after that. And it's like, wait a second. So they aren't frost giants anymore. They're not gods of mischief. This is the Loki days after the Avengers, right? And it's
the difference was, and one of the parts that I disliked about Loki was because we had what I would argue we had too much of him leading into the final 2 Avengers films. But regardless, that story or that character's arc ended really well in terms of sacrificing himself for Thor and ultimately making the choice on the side of good. And it was a great ending to the character that moving forward we weren't going to have anymore. And then obviously they're like, but everybody loves Tom Hiddleston, so let's do more. And we get, I believe it's either episode 1 or 2 of Loki where he gets to watch all of his character development. So essentially he's supposed to be just post-death version of Loki.
Yeah, I don't know. He witnesses his like Frigga's death, his mom's death, right? That's kind of one of the big moments, and he witnesses like this relationship with Thor and everything. But still, he hasn't experienced that.
Yeah,
and also knowing him, I'd be like, who cares? I'm going to change all of this. No one's going to die. I'm going to win. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm the better brother. I'm going to be king. I want the throne. Because like yesterday, that's what he wanted. You know what I mean? Yeah. To the point where he's working with Thanos. So I don't know. It just felt so extreme. And again, that slip up of like the cold, it's like, to me, and it may seem small, maybe it is, but to me, it's such a fundamental misunderstanding of who these characters are. and just forgets everything that came before. To me, that's just how I felt
Well,
at the time. So I was like so annoyed because like that moment I thought this is genius. And it went from this is smart to being, oh, actually they just don't care. They don't care about the canon or lore or whatever. So
I,
that brings it down.
canonically,
Maybe it's a
Loki
B
would
minus.
only fall in love with himself. That's
This part's true. This
yeah.
part's true. But also, I mean, look, talk about abusive relationships. I mean, two Lokis together is probably the most
Yeah.
manipulative, awful, toxic relationship.
Well,
And maybe it will be.
if two Lokis together is a bad idea, what about an entire army of Black Widows? That should be really compelling and awesome.
Oh,
And we did
yeah.
get that maybe 5 years too early or 5 years too late with Black Widow,
Yeah.
the only Marvel film to ever be released with premiere access, which may or may not have cost Bobby Chapek his job. I
That's
don't.
right.
I'm just assuming. I don't know. I don't know anything. So Black Widow, you have in D. We're at her first feature film. The most people were ready for Marvel back at the theaters. Ours up in Canada were closed at the time. Even drive-ins were closed, so we had to
Yeah.
watch it at home. You put it in D. Is it just too late, missed opportunity, or the movie tried to get too big for its britches?
I don't necessarily. Yeah, the missed opportunity thing isn't a hurdle for me because storytelling is not linear in this universe. They can go back in time and tell a story to set up a future story. We just talked about Loki, who's dead and came back. So I don't think anything stuff matters. There's
Loki's
now
done
alternate
that 3
realities.
times.
Of course, and I am absolutely certain ScarJo will be back as Black Widow somewhere, somehow, or some version of some character. Right? It's just, I mean, read the comics. Like, there's this is not a thing. The problem with this movie is that it's just not good. It looks like some director, and I don't know the names. I'm not even gonna look it up. Like, shot a bunch of prefab CGI action sequences, and they just kind of like, that's not a story for these things we already kind of made and have to get done. And by the way, we did a set visit for this one in London, and we didn't even get to run any of it. I think we got to run one interview from it. So this is where we're at with Marvel. So I mean, that's behind the scenes stuff that should not affect my thoughts on the film, but this is like where we're at, right? And yeah, I guess also this is the first Marvel Studios movie I watched via screener pre-release, which is because of the whole situation with Premiere Access and trying to get more double down on that Disney Plus money. But this was just a mess. It had such a strong start, or strong enough start, where you have this cool intro card. You're like, oh, they're going for it. This could be the most mature, and probably should be the most mature Marvel Studios production up to that point. They could have, and arguably looking back, they probably should have went with an R rating and did it proper. But it went from this kind of dark, and I think you mentioned The Americans, the TV show, which is one of the greatest TV shows ever made. Brilliant take on like Soviet area espionage and the Cold War and all this kind of stuff, and undercover sleeper agents, all of this stuff, real life Black Widow stuff. And this movie doesn't learn anything from that. Instead, they turn it into this goofball family thing, where they're poking fun at Black Widow's moves. And like you said, there's a Black Widow army, but instead of making them like brainwashed super agents, they're just mind controlled things. And they all have colorful red lights, and they exist in a flying factory full of colorful red lights. And it's like, what is this? This is like a level of Marvel Legends 2, like amazing co-op video game, by the way. But this is not.
I never finished that
Russian
game because
spy
mine
game
was
stuff.
broken.
It's like, let's take everything about the Shield helicarrier and make it more dumb and more goofy. And it's like, what? Why? They could have been so cool. These Black Widow agents should be such awesome, lethal units around the world, and they didn't do anything with that at all.
It should have been like an army of atomic blondes.
Yeah, and even the action stuff, which this is your chance to do not to make the John Wick comparison, but really this is like people without powers who are the most elite trained, like have sacrificed the most on their own power or not. Otherwise, you know what I mean? Like, these are the most capable units ever. Like, one of these people is an Avenger, you know what I mean? Like, who escaped. So imagine what the other ones could do. So, yeah, I don't know. Instead, we got this giant CGI aerial battle where they're flying through debris and punching it. And it's like, what? This is not. Why is this an Iron Man ending? You know what I mean? This should be a Black Widow ending, and they just didn't know how to do that, I guess, or didn't trust themselves. And it's just the vision wasn't there, or was just bad.
The
and
vision
the execution was also poor.
What was Vision doing at this time? Because if this is 2016, post Civil War, he's still with Tony. I was gonna make a Vision joke.
And then we got, there's some this thing where they have to cast non-Russian talent to play Russian characters and put on voice accents, which I'm kind of sick of at this point. Like, have we not learned anything from the X-Men films? Like, stop doing that. Like, just get Russian talents. The Americans got Russian actors to play Russian characters for the whole embassy and a lot of the support characters. And this, we got, like, I love David Harbour, but he's not,
Have you
I
seen
love
the interview
Flo.
with him
But
where he talks about when he's hanging out with other Russians, why is he speaking English? He should be speaking Russian.
yeah, and you got Ray Winstone as the bad guy here, and his accent is like, I think he's got 4 accents. I can't tell what he's even saying. Like, it's. I mean, I
He's
can
in
say what
Puss
he's
in
saying,
Boots: The
but
Last Wish, and he's very good in that. He plays Papa
does he have
Bear.
4 accents?
No,
Oh,
just
yeah.
one.
And I know a lot of fans are up in arms about Taskmaster. I don't care if they change the origins of that character or anything, but like they just a meaningless unit. It was just there for marketing, I guess. And like, of course, again, this is another character they're promising to bring back in Thunderbolts, but I don't know. Like the Taskmaster is a very unique character outside of the suit, and they again just made her a blank. Nothing. Just
Nothing.
a Terminator unit who's like less interesting than the Winter Soldier. So it's just misfires across the board. So yeah, this is one of those movies that when I look back on it, the more I dislike it. So a huge waste, and it deserved to give ScarJo a chance to do something better. So yeah.
What if it was better? What if was also a television show? It wouldn't be good because you both of us put it in F because it's bad.
Yeah, I actually get like this weird Hulk level anger inside of me when people say they like What If or certain episodes from it. I'm like, guys, stop. Don't even get me started. What If is just garbage television. It is terrible. They couldn't even get the voice actors for some of the cast, but they just like don't even try then. If you're not going to get everyone, don't even try. If these stories are this bad and cheap and goofy and flimsy, like what are we doing?
This is not worth it. It especially looks bad given the caliber of, as in another Disney property, the Star Wars television series that are on Disney Plus. Like, okay, they don't get the actual movie talent, which is certainly a hurdle, but they get top tier level voice actors to provide the talent.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, What If is awful. And more than that, it should have been an interesting exploration on different universes that eventually have to do with the films. And we're going to get, because I've talked about this and I'm sure you feel the same way. Like, we get a Captain Carter, we get an Evil Strange, not the versions we got in the movie. Just essentially promos for different versions of the same character.
It's very strange. And in fact, this show is so bad. I'm not going to get the details of the episodes. I mean, there's like I try to find things I like in it, but it's really why.
Party Thor.
But look, it's Party Thor. Yeah. Again, talk about Infinity Stones, like Ultron jumping universes with the stones or whatever. Like that doesn't they shouldn't work. Like that's not how, right? The stones don't only work in your universe, right? Which also negates whatever. They've lost track. But anyways, this production is so bad that Marvel was to do is took it out of their panels going forward. So they just took all the Marvel animation stuff and we're like, oh, you guys go in the smaller room over here. We won't even talk about you anymore. And but I have zero excitement now for like Marvel Zombies and any of these other animated things.
The worst one is Spider-Man Freshman Year. Which doesn't is not even canonic with the film. So what's the point?
No, it's just I don't even know what the point is. Why even call it that now? It's like I don't know.
Spider-Man on Disney Plus. That's what it is. I don't even want to have you talk about What If because I can see how upset it makes you.
It's just dumb. I felt like it's just a waste of time. It's horrible to say, but this thing shouldn't even exist. Like someone to watch that. Oh, it's so dumb. They can't even finish one of the episodes. It's missing the Iron Man Gamora episode. So the finale has like canary characters in it. It doesn't even make sense. It's like, yeah, we'll put that in season 2. I'm like, finish your and then put it out. It's like, come on. This is not yeah. So that's don't even watch it. It's not even worth your time. What's next?
So the theatrical films finally came back all over the world. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. You gave
maybe the only bright spot in this whole mess. Don't start. No, I'm just no. There are things I like. Shang-Chi was great. I think you and I have had many conversations about how much I think Simu Liu is like such a wonderful talent and such a such a good face for this franchise as someone who should be. And it's a weird saying this now because there's no Shang-Chi sequel announced. There's no confirmation he's anywhere in this franchise yet. Cycle back to 2019 at Comic-Con or whatever. He is, to me, the absolute star of the Marvel Studios panel in Hall H at San Diego Comic-Con, where he came on stage, they introduced him, and he was like so charming, so confident, so fun, so smart. I was like, oh, wow. Like, we know this guy from Kim's Convenience, and I saw him in an episode of The Expanse one time. And it's like, but wow, this guy is a star. Like, to me, I was like, oh, goodbye, Chris Evans. Goodbye, Robert Downey. We don't need you. You're done. Like, we have this guy now. He's the future. And then they just like, he's nowhere to be found again. So I really, yeah.
It's frustrating. We saw this together, and it's
that's right. Yeah.
What if it's? I'm saying what if again. It's takes all the lessons from like Jackie Chan action comedies and then applies it to the MCU, and it does expand the universe, and it adds in cool lore. It gives a respectable Mandarin with Tony Leung, and it introduces some very interesting elements, like what are the 10 rings? Let's have an awesome post-credit scene with Hulk, or I guess he was Bruce Banner, Wong, and Captain Marvel. Oh, they're sending out a signal. Where are these things coming from? We're not going to talk about it for... We're 2 years now.
Yeah, I will say the parts I don't like, though, are like those goofier elements. I actually didn't like the Ruffalo Captain Marvel stuff because it just felt like they just shot it in like a weekend in like their closets with the green screen. And
Rob,
like,
let's be totally honest. Most of the post-credit scenes have been like that since like
yeah,
2017.
This one was like, this one didn't hold back on like basically telling Shang-Chi, you're an Avenger now. You're going to be helping us. Like they went straight for it. Like it's like part of the story basically. And yeah, that was weird. It just felt goofy. And it was also raised the questions about Banner's like, wait, are you Smart Hulk? What happened to your arm? Like, what's going on? I can't, you know what I mean?
And She-Hulk had to go out of their way to explain that.
Yeah, it's just guys, follow the rules of your franchise. It's not hard. Like, just ask some people who've seen them.
There are interns, I guarantee you, like getting coffee when they're like, what happened in this? I know, just ask me. I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah. What's funny, I think the trailers for this one did a disservice because it was so much better. And the moments in the trailers that were kind of like, it's okay, were actually ended up being awesome sequences in the final film. Yeah, the action's great. Simu put in the work. I was worried about Awkwafina as well, but I thought she was a great supporting character. They used them well. I also love the origin story for the Mandarin. They show these flashback sequences, and they show this beautiful, like classical style, like action set piece in the forest. It's just beautiful. I wish we saw more.
It's a lot of wire work. It's more akin to something like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, exactly. Yeah. And of course, you got Michelle Yeoh in here, who like is an absolute legend, and this year has been phenomenal for her. Obviously,
should she be in everything all at once?
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. It seems. Even Star Trek's trying to bring her back for a new show, but I don't know when that's going to happen with her schedule. But
I just need more Strange New Worlds. That's all I want. I love that show.
Look, you and I understand how many productions there are with the Marvel Studios and all these superhero franchises. I mean, look at this ridiculous Phase 4 slate. But Michelle Yeoh was introduced in Guardians 2 as one of these OG Guardians. It is weird to me to bring her back after having such like a little moment where like, oh my God, and having James Gunn saying these characters are coming back, to having her play like a super important and like supporting character in this. I'm like, guys, like, do we have to do this? Like, it's gonna be so confusing if they actually do bring those Guardians back. Now, people are gonna be like, "That's the same character, right?" Because
at least with Gemma Chan, she's not blue.
Yeah, and Gemma Chan, same thing. Of course, she's in Captain Marvel, and she plays a Kree, so blue skin, green super suit, and then they bring her back as the Eternals lead. We'll talk about that soon. But really? Like, do we have to do that right now? It's tough. Gemma's character was such a small bit part, and I guess you could make the same argument with Michelle Yeoh. It's like a cameo at the end. But if the promise is true and they are going to be supporting characters in Guardians 3 or beyond, that does create a problem. And it would be really weird and maybe awful to recast that character or change how she looks all of a sudden. I don't know how they reconcile that. It's a weird problem to introduce when they don't need to, but more screen time the better is the main point. So we have to accept it.
I went on a tirade around the time of before Shang-Chi had come out where Hollywood is as a whole kind of telling you like, we want to be more representative, and somebody who has Asian background was very excited for Shang-Chi. But as much as I love Michelle Yeoh, it unfortunately cast a lot of people. Tony Leung being different because he was somebody who spent most of his career on the other side of the world. We've had Michelle Yeoh for a long time. There's more than one actor or actress that you could have cast in that role. I'm glad it's Michelle Yeoh, but outside of Simu Liu, Aquafina was a known commodity. Like, nobody outside of his sister, Monger, was a complete newbie to Hollywood. So
But they're hopefully getting, if they're still doing that spinoff show, I hope.
I hope so. I mean, I'm
They have to
more
do
frustrated
something.
that we have no idea what's going on with Shang-Chi 2, and I need to see him fight the new Iron Fist. That's all I want.
Yeah, actually, that's true. You know what? I bet the sequel will happen after all of his Phase 6 stuff, and they'll be delving to that kind of, you can do a more isolated story like that. But what I think is going to happen is like Shang-Chi and like the artifact will be like a central plot line. Like he'll be one of the main characters in Avengers 5 and 6. And like so much of that universe will be explored. You know, the same way Wakanda was like the central point for Infinity War or whatever, right? I bet I wouldn't be surprised to see like maybe like the 10 Rings headquarters be like a central location for something kind of big story element there, and the whole family can be involved again. But I don't know. But to me, like Gemma and then Michelle, it's like, let's get more actors, the more Asian actors, and give them roles. Like there's more. What's next? Like Randall Park is playing a lead character in Thunderbolts. It's like you
A
can't.
different
There are more,
character.
a completely different character, but looks exactly and he does magic tricks.
But with his other hand.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got a different color suit. But that's like that's the equivalent. And it's like, it does highlight the problem that there's
Well,
not
but they
enough.
did it even earlier, Rob. We didn't even talk about this, and it segues in perfectly. The principal in the Spider-Man films was in Captain America: The First Avenger, and it's the same
Oh my
guy.
God. Yes.
And then
What are
they're like, "Oh, it's his."
Howling Commandos?
Yeah, it's like, "Oh, it's his great grandpa."
Yeah, I mean, there's minor versions of this with like non-Asian actors, like James Gunn cast Quill's mother is like the girl from Captain America
Yes.
who hits on Steve Rogers,
Yeah.
but that whatever, it's always going to happen. And Kevin Feige goes out of his way to like tell actors like, hey, if you take the smaller role, it doesn't mean you're not included for future roles. So it's just, you got to accept actors doing their craft and playing multiple characters. For you and I who have like a keen eye for this kind of stuff, it's annoying, but at some point I feel like everyone in Hollywood is going to be in 2 of these films, so it's I don't know, maybe it's a reality we have to accept. But these like actors who are like super in big roles now, it does create, I think, canonical problems for mainstream viewers. And even if I can just accept it, I think it's gonna be weird for some people if this keeps happening.
Well, you've been expressing your concern over their knowledge of the history and the canon of the MCU. Do you think we're going to ever explore a giant hand sticking out of the earth? Because canonically, we haven't talked about it yet, and I don't think even the MCU wants to. Which is, like, you have it in CD area, like, we'll call it a C-, just for simplicity's sake.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. This film, and potentially the one we are going to be talking about Antman. These films, while they may not be great, I feel like are getting beaten to death even within the MCU fan base.
Yeah. The problem with this ongoing thread where like movies became chapters in a larger story is that you had to balance the importance of the book versus the chapter. And what they're telling us over the last 2 years is that so many of these chapters are going to be mediocre that it's okay to start missing them. Well, as soon as you start doing that, and then people still give you a chance, but you underdeliver, you're telling them that they really don't have to go see it. So this is a different conversation, but I'm actually surprised Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania did as well as it did at the box office, given the critical reception, of course, but also just like what many were saying or calling the fatigue of this IP. And I hate the term superhero fatigue because it ignores what genres can be in storytelling, how that can be different and evolved. But I do believe that these products have been under delivering for 2 years. And you can look at my whole snapshot of this tier list as an example of that. But Eternals, a film that came out too soon because it wasn't supposed to come out. Eternals only came out when it did and was rushed as much as it was. It did benefit from a COVID delay, but it was so fast tracked because they were trying to fill the slot left over by Guardians 3 being delayed because Disney thought they were going to fire and rehire James Gunn.
They did think that and then do that.
Yeah, exactly. Weird choices. James Gunn, who's now the CEO of DC Studios. What? What a rapid turnaround that was. U-turn. But yeah, Eternals was so rushed. This is another one we did a set visit for. Our last set visit we did just before the pandemic. And we got there on the last 2 days of shooting, or last day of shooting. And it was a last minute set visit organized like 2 days in advance. And every single interview we did, everyone says we are rushed, we are rushed, we are rushed. The costume designers who usually have, and I'm pulling numbers out of my hat here, but they said something like we usually have like 4 or 8 hero costumes per character, the backup ones, whatever, and we have this many weeks to make them. Well, we have a quarter as many weeks, and we can only make 2 costumes each, and that's, you know what I mean. And every department was the same. So
Wow.
this is Chloe Zhao. Is that, am I saying that right? Or who directed this?
Yeah,
one?
Chloe
This
Zhao.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of nods about her being able to do some actual cinematography and go to some locations, but they didn't really take advantage of that.
Can
And
we talk about that though? Like Phase 4, outside of Shang-Chi, which actually seemed like they were able to go to places.
Mm-hmm.
After the Eternals, I think everybody needs to go back and thank Chloe Zhao for actually going outside, because we've had 3 films, regardless of the quality of them, where they all were shot in the volume and not by people who knew how to do it properly.
Yeah, and I'm kind of bored with that. I mean, everyone is. I mean, this is not to derail, but this is the whole like Star Wars Andor versus everything else Star Wars right now, right? It's a whole different ball game.
That's a good reference to your last episode on the podcast, which was the first 3 episodes of Andor.
Was it? Oh man, wait, that show held up. Best Star Wars. Yeah. So Eternals is like really kind of a mess, visual effects mess. They did shoot outside, but didn't do anything with it. Most of it's just open land, and the deviance of it all were just weird CGI things. The Celestials ended up being weird, and they didn't go full cosmic with it. They didn't take advantage of like the beautiful artwork of the old comics. They didn't go hard into craziness, which they should have. This should be a wild film, as much as Quantumania is wild, because they just show you the craziest stuff in the quantum realm. Even though the main story may be simplistic, but whatever. Like they actually went for it in that film in terms of pulling craziness from the comics. This one didn't really do that, and you could tell because what you hinted at up front is like this. There's a celestial being destroying the tides of the earth, I think, up in the north, like in the ocean, and not a single character has referenced this in 2 years or whatever. So I don't know what's going on with MCU Earth in the year 2025, whatever the year they're at right now, but nobody seems to care what's going on.
Not at all.
And again, this is the Phase 5 film, but Quantumania has like a quick scene showing a character and their efforts to deal with housing and the food crisis of the earth, but there's no mention of the entire planet being out of balance because there's a celestial being statue coming out of
his fingers pointing out of the earth.
The ecological disaster that must have caused, let alone like the gravitational forces caused by that. I don't even know. But
to be fair to Eternals, it's not the first time something like that has happened. I don't know if you remember in Guardians 2, a like Dairy Queen explodes into goo in the year 2015.
Yeah, which I thought was like the perfect through point of like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s going to get involved with it. It's like, or you know what I mean, damage control. But nope, we're just going to ignore that thing.
Well, to go from Celestials and the potential of the entire universe, December we got Hawkeye.
Ah, yes, the best and most winningest Avenger of all time,
statistically
in the
speaking.
comics and movies. Yes. A guy with no armor, no powers, no supernatural artifacts, no magic,
we're going to say no armor.
Artifacts.
I'm like, no, he is.
No, he doesn't even use a gun or wear armor, and he still puts everything on the line, despite having a billion kids, to save the day every single time. 100% win rate. Okay. Hawkeye show I was obviously hyped for. It's a kind of a fun Christmas romp, so to speak. They introduce another amazing Hollywood talent as Kate Bishop and Haley Steinfeld, but they don't do much with it. There are some really cool heartfelt moments with Clint in this one, which are some of the most powerful, like heartfelt moments I think in the franchise, especially when he's talking to his son and trying to keep his family there, but trying to do what's right again, always sacrificing for everyone else. But I think the Kate Bishop of it all, it was kind of the first half too goofy and childish and weird. They didn't, and they kind of got there a little bit towards the end where they have like the heart and she has her like quips and stuff like that, but it felt a little too cheap in the first half. And then this is kind of one of the first examples where we get the Netflix characters introduced. We finally got to see Kingpin.
The week before, strategically, because of the film that followed the next week.
That's it. And they took Kingpin by the amazing Vincent D'Onofrio and made him just a ridiculously laughable character in this.
He had a Hawaiian shirt from the comics. It's fine.
Yeah. He looks. Yeah. Don't you see the panels, guys? No, they took this character who's such an intimidating, powerful figure, especially coming after Daredevil season 3, which is an incredible piece of TV, by the way. And I wish Marvel Studios could learn from that. Instead, they made him like a clown who just gets beaten down in his first encounter with Kate Bishop, and he's the guy who always comes back and he's always outthinking everyone. And even when you think he's losing, in the end, he kind of wins what he's trying to do. And he's always there. In this, he's just a loser. And he just loses. That's all he does. He's a laughable loser. And it's like, is that the Kingpin introduction to Marvel, the Marvel Cinematic Universe? That's a bold choice. And there's some goofy stuff with they kind of poke fun, and I don't like this. It's maybe this is Renner doing this, but like they have the Ren Fair role players. And they kind of like use that to kind of like poke fun at fandom, and which is like very much Renner in real life. I think that's how he kind of feels about this whole thing in social media, and he understands the need for it, but I don't think he loves it. And the reason he loves Hawkeye the character is because he's like the least of that. He's the least superhero-esque. He's just a guy, and he's not a company man.
But he's still got his costume, and at the end of it, he finally got the
and he gets which was okay. It was as cool as I thought it was going to be. I'd almost rather him rock the T-shirt and an arm guard with the symbol as opposed to the, you know what I mean? It was okay.
I didn't specify. You put it in like C+, B- territory.
Yeah, there are parts of it. Again, there's some great Renner moments, and like again, think when he becomes the spy, like when he's going after what's that guy's name? Is it Fra Fee, the actor? Is he an Irish actor or whatever? When he goes after the henchman for Echo.
Oh yes, yeah.
And he's in the car. He just like outplays everyone, and you get a flashback to him as Ronin just wiping out a group. Like when he's on as an agent or an assassin or an escape artist, he's just 100% win rate. That is Hawkeye, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like his Jason Bourne character in the Legacy spinoff, right? He's just awesome. Like, that's so good. They should have done so much of that. Then they turn it around and you get some goofy stuff. So again, they lost it tonally, and it could have been better. The Christmas theme was all right, but it didn't. I'd rather not have that and just have him being amazing, and then him like having to help and mentor the next Hawkeye. But they kind of lost track of that a bit. Again, it's like this could have been great. It's just good enough, So it's like B-, low B and this is from someone who friggin' loves Hawkeye, right? But
yeah, and
a little underwhelming.
To end that year of 2021, we have Spider-Man: No Way Home. I'll say C+, I guess, based on where you have it here. C+.
Can I find in this massive pile of? Oh, it's off-screen.
Yeah, off-screen. Yeah, we'll say.
Yeah. It's a B-, C+. Yeah, you're right. I mean, this was the event film, right, of the phase, I suppose. Or ended up being that. It's a nostalgia marketing play, genius marketing play.
Hey, to give them some credit, they technically marketed nothing outside of the two villains.
Yeah, but they knew, like, it didn't matter. Every time they hit something back, it was like working in their favor. You know what I mean?
That's
true.
Is
like it was just genius. It was like Marvel Studios telling Sony, "No, shh, keep your mouth shut. It's gonna work," and it did. And people blew up. And like I'll never forget. Like we were so fortunate enough to work with Sony on this to host like not just one screening but multiple, I think. And like the demand was so high, we moved to like the biggest theater possible. It gave away more tickets, and there were like thousands upon thousands and thousands of people trying to get in to see this movie early. That is hype, right? And, it was fun to see the OG characters back and to respect that. But I would say it would probably be more fun to have a great Spider-Man movie because I'm still waiting for that. You know what I mean? Like
in live action, you mean? In live action.
In live action. Oh, Spider-Verse is in another game. Like Spider-Verse wouldn't even be like above, like you couldn't even see it on this chart. It's so high above. You know what I mean? These guys are like swimming to try to catch for air, and Spider-Verse is flying through the air, well fed. Oh boy, no, that's the whole. You love that movie too.
It's the best. It's the best Spider-Man movie of all time. It's not
that's some storytelling right there. No, I wish any of this stuff came close to that. Talk about planning and execution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So No Way Home is a big old sloppy plot mess that's so fun to watch in theaters and seeing all these characters come back. But if you stop to think about what's going on and how and why and some versions of these characters, you're like, oh boy, that's really weird. And then you're like, wait a second, wasn't this supposed to be like a Craven the Hunter type movie where Spider-Man's on the run or something and his ID's revealed? And they went straight into like the Doctor Strange of it all and just the craziness. But it was cool seeing everyone back, but ultimately it becomes like kind of forgettable despite how momentous it was at the time, right? Because it's kind of like, eh. Whereas the first two movies are stronger stories, obviously.
I think what I enjoyed most about it, and this is probably coming from, no, it's not. I know it is. It's coming from a level of bias where, at least in the feature films department, Spider-Man, the character, worked the most when it was a character on his own, down and out, like, right, living with no rent, barely able to afford anything, not being able to pay for anything with Aunt May, and in that regard, this film gets him there at the end of it, which feels like a momentous occasion. And so, in doing what they do with Peter Parker, Tom Holland specifically, in No Way, it's the most similar to the previous 5 films. So I liked having an actual core relationship with his, I mean, in this instance, it was his aunt. So I like that aspect, but the focus certainly is pulled from Tom Holland when you have this big grandiose multiverse film.
Agreed. And it's funny that the very end sequence is like setting up the Spider-Man that everyone kind of wants, where he's like the local neighborhood spider hero, not some Iron Man 2.0. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So I mean, that's very telling. And it's like, but here's the thing. Now they're at a point now where everybody wants the Amazing Spider-Man 3. Everyone wants Sam Raimi to do another Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and we have Tom Holland who's going to be, according to some rumors, like a lead basically for the Avengers 5. So
yeah, a Spider-Man film that may come. We may get all of these. I don't know. Like, as a fan of Andrew Garfield, I appreciated getting him his time in the sun and people realizing how awesome he is, particularly as Spider-Man, even given the ups and downs, more downs probably of those films. But I think we could probably talk about that forever. We got to start running through these maybe a little more quickly. This may be my longest episode ever.
sorry about
Moon
that.
Knight. That's okay. Moon Knight is in the BC. Again, B plus, C minus.
Yeah, look, very quickly. This is again, it's okay. CGI was weird. It ended up being kind of forgettable because I never think about it, and like this character doesn't seem to have any relevance to anything, despite everyone saying, "Of course, Oscar Isaac will be back." And I'm like, "Where? Why? How? Does it matter? I don't know."
Werewolf by Night. Just kidding.
To his credit, it's completely isolated, but wow, like the whole, again, crazy CGI battle at the end, some weird choices made along the way. But I mean, I like Ethan Hawke. I don't know, Oscar Isaac's fun. This show is okay, but it's like, I think you take a character like that who we've been waiting for forever, and maybe we should try to do a little more. I don't know. I feel like it'd be so mean, but it's like I want premium great TV. You know what I mean? I want to see these shows be compete with the top 3 of every other streaming service, and they're just nowhere in the same game. And like Moon Knight's another one where it's like, it's okay. This could have been a big budget ABC thing. You know what I mean?
It totally could have been. This one you did an episode. Shout out to Podcast X. So if you want your extended opinion on it, you can check out that episode. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is in D.
Yeah, I fell asleep the first time watching it, but I did see it again for the podcast.
You were coming off a flight, were you not? Had you not just gotten back from somewhere?
It's very possible given the timing of it.
Be quiet, Siri.
I hear Siri. It's I don't know. It's like on paper, you're like, wow, multiverse. You get to see some version of the Illuminati. They're bringing back Antman, who's crushing it on the Star Trek TV shows, and oh my God, Reed Richards is there, and they got Krasinski. Everyone's been talking about this for years, and it's just like a big meh. You know what I mean? And there's some cool visual stuff, but I don't know. It just seems so weird, and they don't really explore the multiverse in a meaningful way. They could have got crazier with it. They don't. I love that Sam Raimi got to do like the zombie Strange, like this crazy dark version of that, because it looked visually cool. But in the end, this movie felt like, it felt like one of the weaker ones, I thought. And again, for all the craziness up there, and how much I ended up respecting the first Doctor Strange and the visual quality of that and some of the things they did there, this one just felt like they hijacked a potential great sequel, the same way the multiverse and the marketing gimmicks hijacked what could have been a great Spider-Man film in No Way Home. This was the same thing, and it's like this is another. It's okay. I probably like this one even less than No Way Home. So I don't know. If for something that seems to be so important, it's one of the ones I tell people you really don't need. Shouldn't. I wouldn't recommend it. But I don't know.
Interesting. All
It's
right,
really
and
weird.
in my opinion, another face of the MCU that I'm hoping to see in more and more projects was the debut of Miss Marvel. We know she's going to
Mm.
be in the Marvels, but getting more cosmic.
Another wonderful Canadian talent joining the
Yes.
MCU, like Simu, and we'll talk about She-Hulk, I guess, later.
C plus territory would appear here.
Yeah, this show had like some of my favorite things in the MCU, like the family, our lead, the friends, like the stylistic choices in the first few episodes, where kind of like the comments you kind of see Amon Vellani's or Kamala's thoughts and via background art and stuff
It
like
was
that, or
very
stuff.
Scott Pilgrimy.
It was very Scott Pilgrimy, which was that's a good call out. It's very much that, and it's awesome. It's so well done, dude. And they shot it differently. They took their cameras and moved them in interesting ways inside of real sets. It's like wow, filmmaking is crazy.
Do you
It's nice.
remember when it was trending on how they shot the shot of her falling over the couch?
Yeah, totally. But like that's cool, and they did a lot of little things like that. People kind of forget, but there's a lot of cool shots of her walking through the streets in the school that are really well done and more complex than you'd think. But they actually tried to something different here. And then we got to this weird semi-villainous faction and this other secret faction, and there's a weird flashback time travel episode, and it's like,
And
oh
she's a
boy.
mutant.
And yeah, and it's like, wow, this went from like kind of a cool character study and younger character introduction to like this is like so poorly thought out and skipped over so quickly that's so meaningless. And but Magic Bengal, remember 10 rings? That's cosmic. Oh, Easter eggs, right? This is setting up something, I think. And
Yeah.
cue the music, X-Men. It's like what? Like what is this show even about? So it went from like, oh, this show is like one of my favorites to be like, oh boy, this is all bad now. So it, again, amazing character. I'm very hyped to see her back in the Marvels once we learn more about that. And she's such a talent. I think she'll be there for 20 years, I hope. She could lead a team like the Champions down the road. But wow, this show was actually bad. Despite the moments I love at the beginning. And there's some cool moments at the very end too. And a bold choice in changing her powers, of course. They veered away from the stretchy stuff and went more energy prism armor from the X-Men
Constructs,
style.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. I do recommend this one though.
Do you? All right. Do you recommend Thor: Love and Thunder at a C minus D plus?
I do. This one's really fun. It's just incredibly stupid. So it's like you for very, very, very high fun factor.
I need that on the
Yeah.
box art. Very fun,
This-
really stupid.
Yeah. I think Taika's done with the MCU going forward after this. I think they're like, it is so jarring in my head to have a sit down with Chris Hemsworth on the set of Age of Ultron and hear him talking about how he called up Feige and was upset that Thor was becoming this kind of dumb brute when Thor's been around 1,000 years. He knows more than everyone. He's actually should have more wisdom and bring more knowledge to the table. And that's why Age of Ultron had this weird thing for him trying to figure out the mystery of the stones and all this stuff. And then we go to Ragnarok where he's like, party animal, yo, bro. And he's got his buddy Hulk there to being like the biggest idiot we've ever seen in the MCU in this. And it's like, wait, what? There are too many gags for laughs. And Taika put himself into this movie way too much because Korg went from kind of funny, maybe a bit much in Ragnarok to being like, oh my God, get him out of the franchise in the Avengers 4 and then this. Yeah, just too much. And it's weird because you have Christian Bale in here for like 15 minutes putting on an acting suite. You know what I mean? And it's, oh, what a waste. But again, it's fun. Like, I guess Goofy has that big third act kids fighting.
It's pretty
sequence
awesome.
It's so fun. It's awesome. It's fun. The music, the visual, you're like, yeah. But then wait, if you use your brain and think of what's going on, you're like, wait, these children are going into battle right now. It's like, wait, Thor can give people his powers now? Like, wait,
Yeah, he's
what?
Shazam.
He's like,
just Shazam.
why did he do this to the Avengers, man? You could have changed everything in that fight in Wakanda. But yeah, so it's just, again, incredibly stupid, so poorly thought out. But man, but there's some really fun stuff. Like I thought Zeus and Russell Crowe was hilarious, and it's like, but should I be laughing at that?
So much.
But to me, it worked. I know, but it was funny. but it's stupid. And it's like, I think we need to drop the stupid and get more serious because Thor can do more. And I get Hemsworth is a funny guy, but he's also can be talented and he can be a badass. Like watch Extraction.
Well, even in the MCU, the best balance of Thor is in Infinity War. Like you get
Yes,
humor from the stupidity, but that scene with Rocket when they're on
that's
their way
it.
to go see giant Peter
That
Dinklage,
was a great story arc for him. Yeah.
moment.
Um, and then it came the excitement of him joining the Guardians and balancing that out. He could be the semi-serious one against the comedy cast, right?
Yeah.
And still be funny. They just went, they're just like, we don't care about story. Look at the Lady Sif sequence, how incredibly dumb that was. Like, and it's like, it was trending on Twitter because someone says, is this an SNL skit? And it's like, it really was. And it's like, that probably shouldn't be happening in the fourth Thor movie. So,
No, it should not.
it's like, why? It's like, someone needs to go in the room and be like, guys, what are we actually trying to do with New Asgard and the Thor character and the Valkyrie character
And
and bringing back and introducing Mighty Thor finally? And it's like, and like, do we need CGI helmets? Is that a thing? Why don't we just give them helmets? Like you've seen Game of Thrones, right? Like, I don't know, man.
I
It's
give
just
them a pass on the CG helmet only because they probably thought it worked because of the endgame time travel suits. Those things didn't exist.
It's every one of these movies does it. Spider-Man always gets made fun of it because they always rip the mask to show his face, right? And it's like Ant-Man and the Wasp, every single conversation, mask open, just vanishes. And it's like Thor, same thing. It's like that's if there's a character who has a hammer, an armored chest plate, and a helmet, let that character be the character who has those things. You know what I mean?
True.
Like that's something different. Like I think it matters to have a place to put your hammer down and your helmet, and it's like that's cool. And you go into battle wearing the helmet, and it's like they just don't care. It's all visual gimmicks, and they CGI everything into oblivion. So
and floating Idris Elba heads, kids' heads. So we talked about him joining the Guardians. This may have been the hardest time I had deciding to actually watch this piece of content, and that was I Am Groot.
yeah, I watched this. I had screeners for that. I had to watch this a while early, and it's so short. It's an easy watch, but I actually, as like, it's so harmless and forgettable, but it's actually like quality animation, and it's like there's some fun little bits in there, and there's like a little nod towards some Guardian stuff in there that you should see. I recommend watching this because you can just do it while eating dinner, and so it's just an easy watch. It's also incredibly forgettable, but it's like there's nothing wrong with it. There's not a big problem. It's just fun animation. They let some animators do some cool stuff with these characters, and it's fine. It's fine. It doesn't even to me deserve to be on this Phase 4 slate. It's more of a side thing, but
That's true.
it's like a Marvel one shot. What they used to be. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, that's fair. We talked about Canadian talent, and the MCU just decided we need more Canadian talent, and they cast the Orphan of Blacks, Tatiana Maslany, as She-Hulk, attorney at law. I loved this show. I thought it was great. We got to see a different side of Daredevil. You have it here at B+, A- territory, slightly under Shang-Chi.
Yeah, this is definitely top 2 or 3 of the probably of the Phase 4 stuff. It's fun. It's really fun. And it's totally in line with the character from the comics. So if you read any of the Jennifer books,
but she twerks, Rob.
Yeah, but there's actually just she does dancing in the comics in goofy times too, and it's
I love Dan Slott. Just every time, it's fantastic.
Dan Slott, who's written the most She-Hulk comics, right? So and it's constantly in love with this character and sharing panels of how exactly this is so in line with the Marvel comics, and people complaining about it just don't deserve to even speak about the show. It's ridiculous. But no, the show is so fun. Those little after credit scenes in most of the episodes were like really well done. I love seeing Tim Roth back, and the Abomination looks better now. I wish they explained that a little better. I guess did they talk about it at all? Like the evolution of like the actual, they should have just said he continued evolving and actually became his full form. They just, the way they went out of their way to explain the inconsistencies with Bruce Banner and Smart Hulk, they should have done the same thing for Tim's character, which I really enjoyed that. This show was fun. The supporting characters are pretty fun. I love the Alan McBeal nature of it all that everyone compares to. I did think Titania was weak. That was annoying. But I love the finale where like you think you're going to get this absurd battle, whatever, and it just flips the script and goes full fourth wall, Deadpool style breaking. And
Kevin Feige is a drone.
Yeah. The fact that they were allowed to do that and went for it, like, again, that's cool. That's the stuff I want to see more of. Just like the WandaVision doing the crazy format up front in early
Yeah.
phase 4, right? I love when they do that because like they're not afraid to take risks. They should be doing more of that, and then but also executing in all fronts when they do that, so they're not letting anyone down. But the show overall is very, very fun. The biggest complaint is just the VFX. I mean, they chose a VFX heavy character for this.
Mm-hmm.
Hulk in the episode 1, which wasn't meant to be episode 1, but they front loaded it because of story reasons. Incredible, looks great, but the She-Hulk character looks like a different character in some sequences, and some of this, especially in the office where they work, like some pretty terrible.
They gave the
Like
visual
Shrek
effects artists a
VFX.
really hard time for that, particularly because she's in a glass office. So
Yeah,
the backgrounds in themselves are not real. And
which
then
is
you
also
are,
annoying as hell, and it's
yeah,
also super well lit, so you see everything.
yeah.
But the hair looked terrible. There was no texture in the skin at times. I couldn't even tell if the lighting or shadows were working. It was just jarring. I don't want to. I'm okay if the effects are 100%, but if it looks like I don't know if this is finished, and it's like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But what do you
I'm
do?
hoping
I
that
don't
they've
know.
had more time with the model. If rumors are to be believed that she shows up in Captain America New World Order, that
Hmm.
they get some more finesse with that. And particularly, even Kevin Feige said we did too many things is a
Yeah.
nice set. One bright spot, in my opinion, is the next piece of content, which I said during my review, I think will become an annual watch, is Werewolf by Night. The B horrorness of this was
Yep.
thoroughly entertaining. It plays with elements of the lore we had never seen before. It's unbridled craziness.
Yep. This is Michael Giacchino, Get Up, infamous composer, now directing for the first time. Did a
Should
wonderful
have been
job with
nominated
this.
for the Batman. Anyways.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you there. Very talented on all fronts, it seems. Yeah, I mean the B campiness works in its favor, in the black and white nature of it works in its favor. The dialogue, the B camp dialogue in the beginning was, I thought, a little too weak. But overall, this was such a fun experience. The characters you get to meet in this, like the man thing, and the leads are so well cast. Like I really, really love this. And now I'm like, this is one of those things where I'm like, oh, I want more of this. Like, let's scrap the other half of the slate. Give me more of this. Even if it's like a 1 hour special a year, I'm game for that. But this, they've opened a can of worms now, because what this teases and sets up with the horror elements and these monster elements of the MCU, which we've not seen yet. Now I kind of want to see all of that. I want to see more of those shows, more X-Files style shows, and these characters in this format, even black
Like
and
an
white and all. If they
anthology
want.
series with Randall Park.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, Randall Park would fit this. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I like Randall
Which is
Park in anything. So it's like,
weird, except for a blockbuster show on Netflix. Ooh.
I haven't seen that, but yeah.
I mean, I don't have Netflix anymore, so.
A good call. We should share passwords. You can't do that anymore. Yes, that's top 3 as well. Really kind of out there. And I said, it's another one of those good things that Marvel Studios is doing with Disney Plus. So
Yes. And the last feature film of Phase 4 was Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Another shout out. You, Ben, and Kofi did do an episode on Podcast X. So if you want to hear more of what Rob has to say about it, it's all there. You have it in C+, B- territory.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously a tough film to produce, and they deserve all the accolades for making this happen and bringing us on an emotional journey like this that pays tribute, but also successfully honors, and then does a nice touching thing at the end. There's a lot of emotional moments in this. I found myself tearing up 2 or 3 times, and I talk about that. But so props to the cast and crew for making this happen, and also props to them for introducing their version of Atlantis, like Talocan and Namor, and actually going for it, like weird ankle wings and all. They did it. So there's a lot of things to love about this film, especially the first 2 acts. I think this falls back on one of the older MCU problems of like the third act weird climactic battle being just ridiculous. There's a set piece on a very textureless tall boat object that involves like some of the worst set piece action design I've ever seen in my life, and the logistics of this battle are such nonsense. It's just like they just didn't know what to do, I guess, and they're just like, throw everyone in this giant room, blue screen, and let's just improvise or something. I don't know, but it was terrible. And that really hurt the film for me. There's also some goofiness with Who is it?
Ironheart.
Ironheart is completely wasted, and the costume looks ridiculous at the end. So I'm glad they're going to give that that Dominique Thorne. Is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to give her own screen time because she's talented. She's very talented, and having her be a character first and getting lots of screen time in the Disney Plus show is much needed. And I wish we had that first. But it was cool. It kind of uses as an entry point, I guess, with the vibranium element of it all. They went maybe. I don't know what they're doing with vibranium. It seems to be causing everything. Is vibranium the solution to all technology, bouncing shields, and mutation? I don't even. It's very confusing how they're handling this increasingly important MacGuffin. I kind of like the. I don't know. We'll talk about that another time. Yeah, Ironheart became a character with ridiculous dialogue. She's a YouTube reacts channel to everything else is going on. And that's literally all they let her do. And then they give her a ridiculous CGI costume at the end. And then they also give 2 CGI costumes to 2 other fan favorite characters at the end, and it's also ridiculous. So it just becomes like the Iron Man party or something at the end. It's very weird. Yeah.
I
So
think
I
what
don't know.
props the movie up is the performances. Like
Yeah.
there's some and clearly, and not that the Academy should be the be all and end all,
Look,
because it shouldn't
you're
be.
right. Angela Bassett and Letitia, like they put on an acting workshop. It was so
Mhm.
powerful. It was I can't even imagine the weight of performing this on these sets with these crew and cast. Given what happened to the late Chadwick Boseman, so it's an incredible work by them, and that they absolutely carry it through. So this is absolutely worth watching. It's one of the better things of Phase 4. It does on its own as a story in a film. It completely falls apart in the third act, but it's an absolute must see for MCU fans and otherwise. I think because of what some of the good things that are in here. So.
And this will lead into the trailer we're going to talk about very shortly with
Mm,
the Guardians of the Galaxy, the holiday special. I have found a kindred spirit in you, Rob Keyes. I didn't enjoy this. I thought it was so overblown, and
yeah.
I didn't think it was good. And you have it in D, and I think it belongs there.
Yeah, it's really bad. And you can tell, like, and I talked about this on Podcast X as well. Like, where like I think James Gunn said, "Oh, I wrote this in like an hour or two, like in between shoots or something." And it feels like that. It feels like they shot it that way too. Look, we get Kevin Bacon in this. You got to watch it because Kevin Bacon's in it, and he's fun. He goes for it. You get to see Mantis become the lead, and which is kind of nice because I think Palm is going to be one of the characters that sticks around from the Guardians post Guardians 3 and maybe joins another team. Who knows? So for that, it's cool, but like I think the quality of storytelling and writing and I don't know,
It's tonally a complete mess.
yeah,
And which is unfortunate because, and maybe I think I will bring this up when we get into Guardians 3 trailer talk, but that it could have had a fantastic emotional center with Mantis not knowing how to tell Peter that they're related. And then
right.
the whole thing turns into a farce in the
Yeah.
worst way possible.
They also, I forgot, they added more heart to Yondu and that kind of origin story of his
Yes, that
relationship
is
with
true.
Quill.
Yeah, with the
And that's
Ralph
kind of neat.
Bakshi style flashbacks.
That's it. And they rotoscoped everything. They actually shot it in live action, rotoscope all the artwork. So that's kind of cool. That was kind of the neat story element of it all. But I don't want to say they're phoning it in, but I will say this thing felt like they had time and money in between things and needed some content. And they just kind of said, just do it. It's with your cast. And I feel like, Chris Pratt probably did like 3 hours of work one day. It feels like that's probably not true at all, but you know what I mean? Like that's what it feels like. It's the same way I feel like what they did for the Cosmic Rewind ride at Epcot at Walt Disney World just feels like such phoning it in. They just don't care anymore. You know what I mean? You can tell all these actors are on interviews saying, "I'm done with this." Like Batista's out, Zoe Saldana's out. You know what I mean? They're so done with this.
Well,
And
let's segue. That's all of this stuff that you're saying is perfect. So that's Rob's tier list. If you're confused on where things were, don't worry about it. I will have a photo on the Twitter and on the Instagram account so you can see exactly where everything ranks for that reminder. So with the Super Bowl, we got a bunch of trailers that I talked about at the beginning of the episode. Were done last week. The one that I did not have time for was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And Rob, for as long as I've known him, has been a champion of the Guardians of the Galaxy. We have the final installment in at least this era coming out. And I'm going to tell you how I feel, and then I'm curious how you feel about the trailer. I, first off, did not enjoy Guardians 2 very much. I thought it was a lot of rehashing certain character arcs that we had. I mean, in essence, a rehash. You're doing things again, particularly with Rocket's relationship with the Guardians. And the part of the trailer that I am not looking forward to in the film is Gamora may or may not falling in love with Quill again. It was the repetition I was most nervous about, knowing that she was eventually coming back. I think this film is going to have an emotional center that I think will be really compelling, with Rocket being the focus, which James Gunn said publicly, and getting to learn about his past, as well as, I almost said the Ultra Humanite. What I meant to say was the High Evolutionary, which could be really interesting. I think the stakes are there for this to be a very good film. Clearly, they built some sets with nowhere, but I'm nervous about this film.
I don't know what to think. What I do think is that they are holding 99% of the movie back from the marketing, which I do very much appreciate. This trailer shows you nothing of the scope of the film. They get the tease on this planet looks like Earth with the funny Drax scene with the ball, whatever, and then like you get to see like the one set piece where they're all in the colorful suits jumping.
The 2001 Space Odyssey suit.
Yeah, there's all the meat stuff, but it's like these are such isolated events. The background of the whole Adam Warlock story is completely not there. Any other cosmic connections or crises they're dealing with are not there. The Gamora of it all is not there at all, other than like them fighting. But she's already there, so that there's so many connective threads missing, and I think so many set pieces missing. I forget they have talked about this, but do we even know the explanation for the ship they're on? This is not the Benator or whatever it's called.
No, it shows up in the holiday special. Like, Gunn's come out publicly and said there were specific reasons for the holiday special. One was to debut the new ship. One was to show they're kind of using Nowhere as their base, and Cosmo is there.
Cosmo's there, yeah.
Cosmo's there.
Yeah, and Nowhere is the base. Cosmo. All these things are cool because this goes back to the Andy Landing and I'm trying to blank here. The Annihilation and Annihilation Conquest, which sets up the modern Guardians, is based on they become like a police force based on Nowhere. They have two teams, and you know they are kind of led by Cosmo, the space dog, and it's like that's all awesome. Like that's kind of where what you think the build up, and that would be the beginning of the new Guardians, but this is the end of the Guardians as we know it, right? At least James Gunn's version and this team, and Batista and Zoe Saldana probably. Yeah, I don't know. So I do like they're holding everything back,
and Chris Pratt.
Probably, but I don't know. I think Chris Pratt becomes a mentor for someone like Nova if they do follow the comics at all.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
As it's like disfigured because he gets damaged and he's got all his prosthetics when you first meet him in Conquest. And
then he can wear the mask on his stunt double, and then only when the mask comes off do we get to see it's Chris Pratt.
Yeah, they healed up over time. But it was cool seeing that as like that Star-Lord be like a mentor to someone else because he's been through all these wars, and this now Star-Lord has in the MCU. He's been through all these Avengers and all his own films, so that's cool. True. Now they're talking about Nova coming out as a show, so it'd be cool to see him come back with that. And then whatever the new Guardians team is, and this is another topic for another day, it could be like the Infinity Watch, where it's like there's whatever remnants of the Guardians are there, plus the new characters like Adam Warlock are now defending the new Infinity Stones or the Soul Realm or some other thing they're protecting in space. You could do the Annihilators or anything you want as the future Guardians, because you know the space team of heroes is not going away, even if James Gunn and the Guardians of the Galaxy title is. So
do you have somebody in mind that you would like to see take over?
No, I'd have to think about it.
Don't worry about it. It's okay.
Joseph Kosinski. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. Is it Joe? Yeah, Joe because you
Joseph, know Top Gun, Tron guy.
Yeah. Oblivion. Like watch that. That's cool, man. Like so and Tron. Yeah, him. There you go. I like to see him do it.
I like Edgar Wright.
I think
imagine
a
comes back.
Guardian style film with Edgar Wright with all like the cool stylistic is cool. Yeah, but if you want like a more serious world building thing,
That's
I would
fair.
prefer in a franchise out of it. I do think Kaczynski's the way to go. But there's a million people that probably could be great at this. We'll see. Yeah, I don't know. You get to see a shot of Lila too. That's kind of
Oh, the
Rocket's
otter?
part.
Yeah.
Yeah, partner from the comics. So that's kind of nice.
Hmm.
But it's going to be emotional. Characters are going to pass. I hope Adam Warlock is cool. Because Adam Warlock is an absolute central figure to the future of this franchise. It's just out of order. He should have been there for like if Thanos came later, he would be the central figure there, right? But it's all backwards now. So, but I do think beyond Phase 6, like 79, like that's the Adam Warlock show. He's a big part of that. So that's exciting. We don't know anything about it, so we'll have to see. But I'm curious. Another thing I'll say is like this because of the James Gunn firing and the delay. Like he's had the script done for like 6 years or something. So it's like they've had the most time to prep and work. And Gunn is already infamously methodical in planning and sketching out every single shot. Like imagine the amount of tweaks he's had to do this over time and the praise for the script. Even when he was fired, like the actor said, we're not doing like Batista especially said, I'm not making this movie unless they use a script. And then Pratt's like, I cried reading this and all, but they always say that, I guess. But I believe this
He
one.
loves Mario. He's always wanted to be Super
It's
Mario.
yeah. The guy voices
Wahoo!
everything. Yeah, that's it. Wahoo. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm hopeful. I think they learned from Guardians 2 being a big old visually cool film, but a little messy for sure. This one I hope is. I think this one will be better. I hope it's a really good send off.
I would love nothing more than that. I think Phase 4 has made me a little more cynical, but I would
Oh,
love
I
nothing
agree.
more to.
But I think Gunn would not want to end this on a sour note, especially going into the launch of a new franchise. The worst thing you could do is people are like, "Oh, that was bad," and then he's starting the DC franchise and probably directing the Superman script he's writing. That would be bad. So,
It would be very
especially
bad.
after the holiday special, you know,
Oof.
uh, wet
I
fart.
mean,
So, like, that's yeah. I hope Guardians 3 is awesome.
I would love. I never want these movies to be bad unless the people involved are bad people, and I can't say that about any of these things. So currently, Marvel doesn't have those problems. Do they have any problems on their hand with Antman and the Wasp: Quantumania? Box office wise, they did not, with a domestic release or gross of $102 million, worldwide gross of 359, the biggest opening in all of the Ant-Man films. So regardless of critical reception, people went to this.
Third biggest February opening of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty
Oh my
wild.
God, Siri.
Behind, guess what? Deadpool and Black Panther. Marvel owning that month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you want me to go first? Or do you want to
Yeah.
drop some thoughts?
Why don't you dive in? You've seen it. I saw this Thursday at 6:30, so you've seen this
I think I saw it
more
Saturday night.
recently. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So very short version. I like this movie. I like it the same way I like Ant-Man 1 and 2. It's a reliably fun, funny, and has the heartfelt action adventure tropes. It's got the likable cast. It's got the notable gimmicks which work well on their own, but also work well within the confines of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And cool with these movies, for the most part, they do operate on their own. They're pretty standalone, and even this one, for what it's doing, is also pretty standalone. It's like we've only seen the quantum realm really in the Ant-Man films. The Kang we meet is isolated there, and it's the Ant-Man family going there. There's no other Avengers coming in to save the day, and none of this film takes place on Earth except the intro and outro cards, basically. So that's kind of cool. The Ant-Man films, and this one included, they're highly recommendable to friends and family. Like my wife loves them. They're just funny, they're safe. But they're never great. They're just kind of good enough, and there's great moments, I guess. And of those, Quantumania is obviously the most like zany and extreme version of that, since it does take this family out of the world and flips the script, so to speak. And it's like I said, the entire thing's in the quantum realm, and it's nice to finally see them explain and open up that thing, since they've been teasing it since 2015. And for me, to give you some BTS action, I visited the set of the first Ant-Man in 2014 and got to see the very first version of like the macro photography set, and the first MCU film to have like 3 units, right? And then the idea of the building the quantum realm, and I remember asking Peyton Reed and Paul Rudd, who was rewriting the script, asking about like the idea of the microverse. Is there going to be a civilization down there? And like, oh, you know, down on the road we'll get to that. And here we are, 8.5 years later, and boom, there is a civilization down there, and it's cool to see that. I saw this in 3D in AVX, a format you know, and the 3D worked pretty well because it is a colorful and bright film for the most part. And a lot of the CGI hiccups, because like everything is CG, like all the characters you see in the background, all the backgrounds themselves. It's like the sets they built are just like piles of dirt, I think, and everything around them CG. And they built a bar here and there and some little things and interiors, but it's extremely VFX heavy. And it's kind of cool that they let Ant-Man do that. Like who would have thought the idea of introducing Kang the Conqueror and MODOK and all these factions, and people compare it to it being a Star Wars movie, and it kind of is, maybe a little faster paced, but it all happens in an Ant-Man movie. This is like straight up comic stuff. It goes so hard to the comics, and I said on Twitter, you probably saw it, where I was like, I wish Doctor Strange, the sequel, went as hard into the Marvel Comics craziness as this one did. And I don't know when you want to talk spoilers, but like, are we spoiler friendly now? How does it work? How do you do
We're
that?
spoiler free right now, so yeah, we can get.
Okay,
We
so
will
we'll
get
talk
into
about that later. Yeah,
very shortly.
but yeah, it's cool. I think it's just it's too much for one movie. I would say, like you meet factions or things, or you see them, and they're just like there and gone, and there's not much explanation for it there. It's just there. You just gotta accept it. Like it's like they could have had a whole Dune franchise inside the quantum realm if they wanted to. Really, how big vast it seems. But this is not that. This is about Scott Lang and his daughter, right? Really, you know what I mean? And then the other part of the family as well. So, yeah, I thought the critical reception of it being negative to mixed underserved it. I actually think this is a better experience and a better experience seeing it in the big screen than what the reviews would indicate. So I'm curious what you thought.
I have a mixed bag with this film. Visually, it's insane. It has maybe one of my favorite performances of. I mean, counting Phase 5 doesn't count. We're one movie in, but of Phase 4 and Phase 5 with Jonathan Majors, he's absolutely crushing it. And I can't wait to see him in Creed 3 in like 2 weeks. So I'm very excited about that. Obviously, visuals are what they are. It's unfortunate that this was given time. This film's VFX teams they had to undercook what could have been a true spectacle Marvel. And coming off the back of, even though it's not a film I loved with Avatar: The Way of the Water, when given the time, that Avatar: The Way of Water has some of the greatest visual effects ever, and Marvel's continuous trend of not giving these companies enough time to do these things properly. We talked about Black Panther 1 and 2 suffering from the same thing, and when the whole movie has that, it's kind of frustrating. I am a huge Rick and Morty fan, and hearing that Jeff Loveness was writing the script for this really excited me. He wrote some fantastic episodes of Rick and Morty, and there are a lot of those elements in this film. But one of the aspects that I find most interesting is that Rick and Morty scripts historically take a very long time to get approved. That's why, for a long time, the show's production took forever. There were 2 years. Animation in general does take a long time. Anybody remember the show Invincible? It's coming at some point, but Dan Harmon typically is very critical of the script process. It's one thing we talked about James Gunn earlier. They've said, and I hope it is true, we talked about it last week, talk about it this week, that no movie will go into production until they're happy with the script. I think Jeff Loveness is a good writer, but this feels like script or draft 2 of the film, and I would have loved to have seen what draft 4 is. We are introduced to a lot of different characters who ultimately feel meaningless outside of the ones we know already. There are a couple interesting cameos that do help flush out specifically one character's backstory in the quantum realm. I think that Catherine Newton is not given a ton to do as Cassie. Unfortunately, I don't know if that character's history really tracks with the relationships we've had before.
I would say it's Hope who's underserved.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that may be due to external factors that had nothing to do with
Maybe, but
her.
I mean, Yes,
Yeah.
within the confines of the story, though, like
Yes,
really
no,
kind of put off on the
that's fair.
side, including the main relationship. Like I love the moment at the beginning. They kind of go out for a date, whatever. At the beginning, they kind of tease
Mhm.
that, and there's like zero scenery or chemistry between them, like ever
Yeah,
again in the
certainly
movie.
interesting. This
Uh,
feels, to quote um Kofi on Podcast X, where this weirdly being shot later in time, like in terms of the history of human beings, this felt the most pandemic shooting. Like obviously it works that way because they're shooting with nothing, but characters
yeah.
in certain places, limited spots. So I think I agree with you. I think the movie is a lot of fun. It may have suffered just based on expectations alone. Introducing Kang, who was going to be the Thanos moving forward. I'm very excited about that. But at the same time, there are elements of this that continue to bother me with what our expectations are of that character. We had He Who Remains, we have Kang the Conqueror, and there are elements teased moving forward that the trajectory seems confusing, and the simplicity of Thanos was it's Thanos, Thanos, it's Thanos, and there was a Thanos. So there are things we can't talk about with getting into spoilers. So I'm as soon as I'm done, we'll get there. So I think it's fun. I liked it in terms of the entertainment value, but similar to the way you talked about No Way Home, outside of Kang, I think the movie's kind of disposable
Uh,
because Scott doesn't really change as a person, right? And literally, we get to see him experience spoilers ahead. If you have not seen Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, please jump to the end and give a positive review. Anyways, like the movie, you mentioned it literally starts with him being like, do, here's the life of Scott Lang. And you're like, okay. And we talked about this in Internals. Hope is now using shrinking technology to solve problems around the world. Maybe shrink the giant hand so the islands can go back to where they were. I don't know.
that should have been this movie. Yeah.
Maybe. But that idea is free for you, Kevin. The next one you got to pay for. But in terms of that, and then we at the very end, he's doing the same thing. Like he's just like do. Like here's
Yeah, but
my
that's the that's like Michael Pena's character like recapping in the other ones.
but if
That's the
where's Michael Pena? Like
That's the beauty of the story because they have so many supporting characters. And look at
that's
Ant-Man
okay.
2. They introduced the Goliath and Ghost and stuff like that. And it's like, no. This is like the family get together and they're pulled into this thing. Here's the history of Janet and what happened here. And here's the introduction to Kang again. It's like, oh God. So it's so isolated. They're able to take it out of the MCU,
That's
do
fair.
this, and they bounce back at the end. And it's a family doing the birthday thing again.
I to I think what would have at least in my opinion, what I would have enjoyed given the arc that these characters go on, specifically with the relationship between with Cassie and Scott not wanting her to be a hero and him kind of missing this pun intended the smaller things he's letting go because he's an Avenger now, to almost have a Sam Raimi Spider-Man esque ending where off the top of my head, I can't remember what her superhero name is, but to have the three of them being heroes or something, as opposed to Scott being like, well, maybe is everything fine? And then it's just over.
Uh, you know how you said outside the Kang stuff, the whole thing is like disposable, and the intro and outros are kind of like the same
Yeah.
sort of thing. I do think the through line there, and it's not they don't punch it home at the end, but I think it's setting up for later. Is like the whole thing is like Scott Lang's like thinks he's done, he's back to normal life, he's focusing on family, and Cassie's whole thing is like she's in prison, she keeps getting into trouble because she's trying to help. She's like, we have this ability to help people, Dad. Why aren't we helping people? And that's kind of like what brings him into the end, and like so them two getting to go giant together and do all that stuff and fight together. And I think the end of the movie, and again they don't punch it home, is like the idea is like, okay, Scott's not on the sidelines anymore. Hope's helping.
Yeah. But that's
Cassie's
what
gonna
I'm
help.
saying. Like,
Scott's getting in the action now.
we
You know
should
what I
have
mean?
seen him doing something as opposed to just having dinner again.
Well, no, I think again, I agree. That's where they could have punched it home. I think that's what we see in Avengers 5 or whatever the next chapter for that character is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we see that in the final act set piece, which is kind of gnarly. Like that Star Wars like battle. Everyone's comparing it to. Can we talk spoilers? I guess.
Yeah, full
Okay.
war
So
spoilers.
the final battle, they're like trying to disrupt Kang from getting out of the quantum realm and going back to his multiversal conquest, right?
Mhm.
And I like the idea that he's teasing like there's something worse coming, another version of me probably, and that you
I
need to get
don't
me out of
like
here.
that because they keep giving, like, we got He Who Remains, and so we're in full blown spoilers. Loki finally matters, thank God. But we're introduced to not the Kang that matters, and he's like, "Yo, dude, you got to be afraid." And you're like, "Okay." And then Loki ends, and we see a different Kang. She's like, "You should be scared." I don't know why. And then we get this one. It's like, "Oh, this is why we should be scared." And Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror, this is the Kang I want moving forward. We may or may not get him because he's not ultimately killed. He's made into quantum realm, ported away into
Yeah.
time or wherever. So I'm crossing my fingers for that. And then we get the most Rick and Morty thing of the whole thing, which is the Council of Kang.
Which is, I was hoping for the Council of Reed Richards one day. Like, so they're doing it all backwards, but I mean, it does make sense given what we Kang in the
Yes.
comics, obviously. And they have like Immortus, and in the post or whatever post credit scene, you see the Victor Timely, which is the Loki thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's cool too. And is it not Ramatut? That's what you see.
Ramatut.
Right?
Yeah, Ramatut.
And yeah, so that's all cool. I love seeing Jonathan Majors as Kang's in the crowd cheering. He's
Yes.
like, let's go. It's so funny. That's such great casting. Yeah, I hope he gets to do like infinite versions of this forever. Like even if they kill off a bunch of them in Avengers 5 and 6 or whatever. Yeah, that's really cool. What was I saying? I completely lost the thread there.
Disposability of it is what we were talking about in Kang.
Yeah. So I'd like the third act sequence there because you do like the Scott Lang goes full hero mode as a decoy to let all this stuff happen. And I think that was really cool. I think that was Cassie's point being driven home within the confines of the quantum realm. But
I think what this is missing, though, and you mentioned it for the first one, there's almost no macro photography.
No, I mean they do. I mean, obviously they're in the quantum realm, but they do like. You're right.
They shrink, but it's just like from our perspective, like it's something because of the grand scale of this, pun I guess intended for that, like the elements of Scott's powers, I would always like to see them evolving.
Here's the thing: it's like because the quantum realm factor changes everything, right? It's from dropping the supporting characters to being able to successfully put aside the Antman prequels and the rest of the MCU problems, right? I like that they could focus on the story. I think first movie had to introduce like the Honey I Shrunk the Kids of it all. It's like this is what it's like when you shrink down and then shrink down again. So they had to focus on that. We're beyond that now in this movie. This is like now we're in the small world. We've all accepted the shrinking and enlargement.
What does the quantum realm look like on a macro level? Like that would be something we talk about Star Wars.
We saw the steps going down in the first movie, I guess. But
yeah.
I mean, this is just like this is what it is. It's a universe within a universe. It's within the folds, right? And it's we also know how it's potentially timeless or it skips time depending on how it's what we saw in Endgame, right? Which begs the question of how Janet aged the same way when she was there for all these years. But whatever. Who knows?
A frost
pockets. Yeah. Because Loki, Scott Lang said he was there for 5 minutes or whatever, but it was actually 5 years or whatever. You know what I mean? So but again, we don't understand the quantum.
I think he said 5 months.
What? 5 months?
I think it's 5 months. It felt
no,
like
because I thought ScarJo.
It's been 5 years, and he says it felt like 5 months.
I don't think so. I think look it up. I'm curious. Because she's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, no, I was only there for 5 hours. I thought it was like literally hours or something, like in and out sort of thing. But in my head, it's hours. Let's see.
It felt like 5 hours.
Oh, daddy, no sleep. Still got it. Look, okay, let's talk about the important things in this movie. There's the Jelly Man holes, which is like totally Rick and Morty character. Like, so you're losing the macro photography gimmicks and the gimmicks of like the giant Thomas the Tank Engine or like the Pez dispenser in the sequel,
I am.
Hello Kitty. But now you're getting the Jelly Man and the greatest fighting unit in the history of the MCU. These walking buildings that can fly, carry people, and shoot. Oh my God! Like, I don't know if that's from the comics, but they got to put that in every movie. Like, dude. If I were like, they got to bring Iron Man back. He's got to build some tech, go into the quantum realm, get that, bring it to the universe, use those things to fight everyone. That is the coolest I've seen in a movie in like forever. I don't know what it is about these buildings. I think it's hilarious shit.
They're
And the way they
so
look,
weird. They're like
it's
thumbs with
amazing.
fingers is what they
Oh
look
yeah,
like.
they're all like cactus buildings with the spikes, and it's
Yeah,
like
it's
they
very
are
weird.
incredible. But they just like you're like they're so weird, and you're like yeah whatever. Then there's people walking around with these like balls of fuzz as heads and stuff, and there's just I love how weird it is.
It's certainly okay, speaking of weird, what did you think of MODOK?
I loved it. I mean, it's a very different origin story from the comics, obviously, but they went for a giant face with dangling arms and legs with the unit and the mask. It's literally MODOK, as it is in the games and the animation and comics. So anyone complaining about that just doesn't like MODOK. And people saying MODOK's ridiculous. I'm like, yes, read the comics. He's even more ridiculous. Watch him work with AIM. Like,
Did you need to see his ass?
that was weird, but kind of, but yeah, that's Rick and Morty right there. Right? That's exactly Rick and Morty. I mean, how many times have you seen Rick's butt doing things? You know what I mean?
Thousands of times, probably at this point.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious. I think the visual effects on his face didn't look great, but I also don't know how you do that. Like, make that make sense.
It will all because it's Darren Stoll. No,
Corey Stoll,
Darren
Darren Cross.
Darren Cross. Yes, that's. I was literally crossing the streams.
What a great callback to the first movie, by the way.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But what I liked most about the design is it will, because we know what his head looks like, it will look like a JPEG just squished. Like there's no way around it. So I don't know if I needed the like I'm not a dick screaming sequence.
Yeah, I mean, him screaming at the end was kind of whatever, a little weird. I wish he had some other kind of quip that made it hit harder.
But I did like the "I'm an Avenger." That sequence was more entertaining.
That was kind of funny. Scott's like, "Yeah, sure."
I don't know.
That's funny. Like that's good. Like my wife would love that, and I can't wait to show her this. So
I'm seeing it. So date of recording, I'm seeing it again tomorrow. So I'm very curious what I will think after knowing what it is.
I think you like it better.
I think
you've accepted the weirdness. You've accepted the weird or bad parts, and there's a lot of problems with this film. Like again, because they're doing so much in such little time, there's a lot of things that are just left on the table. I think Bill Murray's characters were not great. Like they could have cast anyone else for that. Like
he's there to be Bill Murray.
He was there for a trailer, essentially. You know, I mentioned the Scott Hope relationship is weird, and Michael Douglas wearing a super clean duster, and his scenes were
and he's got Star-Lord guns at some point, pretty much.
Yep, pretty much the same thing. Kang himself, it seems like they made a point of saying his costume gives him the powers, which seems to be telekinetic powers mainly. He does the Iron Man blaster thing too. I don't understand the mask.
Though. We talked to you're bringing up the costume, and you mentioned like Eternals. It looks so good.
Oh, it's the perfect adaptation of the comics. They did it, nailed it. Even and they went for it with the mask and the eyes too. I do question the practicality of the mask. Like, why does he have it on and off sometimes? Like,
is it a HUD? Maybe.
I don't know. I wish they explained it. Like, because he walks into the cells where he's got Cassie and Scott captive, and he walks in. He's wearing the blue mask. And he just takes it off. It's like, why are you wearing it in the first place? Like, what is this for? It's not air. You're not fighting anyone. Like, I don't understand it. This is an example of the CGI mask thing from Thor and Antman.
But you can see him. That's what makes even less sense. You can see Jonathan Major's entire face. And you know what that feels like?
For some reason.
It feels disingenuous, which is odd given the fact how much Kevin Feige has fought for genuine adaptation of stuff. Like his costume, like you mentioned, like not 2 minutes ago, is just from the comics. It's like, look, he's blue, and then we're barely gonna do it again.
Yeah, it's just the on off of it all. Yeah. It just seems like I care about those details a lot because to me they matter, and I think about that thing a lot. Like, and when it's inconsistent or weird or unexplained or nonsensical, it does bother me a lot because I'm thinking I'm trying to figure out what the writers' room is doing, and it doesn't work for me. And I wish they would explain it, and I want to ask them about that when the movie comes out, and they'll just be like, oh, creative decisions, whatever, and it's always. And it's like, I wish there was more thought into these things. That being said, you're right. The costume is great. Majors is great. That all worked in the.
So, but who are we supposed to fear for Kang Dynasty? Like, is it just the Kangs?
Well, we don't know. We don't know
Like, are
that
they
the
gonna?
council.
Is the first trailer for Avengers Kang Dynasty gonna say Kang's Dynasty, and in where the apostrophe is it gonna move to after the S
Oh,
because it's
so
like
the
multiple?
Council of Kings are talking about the exiled one, the
Yes.
Conqueror,
Yeah,
being whatever, and so we don't know what happens. Like, just I imagine the Conqueror one gets out somehow, and so the Council of the Kings, are they going to help try to stop him? Is Kang the Conqueror going to go destroy every other version of himself?
that would be awesome.
That would be the setup for the Dynasty of Kang, right?
Hmm.
Or he comes in and somehow
Which would
takes
be
ownership of it
very
all.
Rick and Morty, where Rick kills all the Council of
In
Ricks.
the exactly in the space
Yeah.
station, which is the council. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I would imagine would happen. And whatever remnants are still left, that becomes his dynasty, or he creates a new dynasty
Yeah.
or whatever. I don't know. So we know the conqueror. There will be a conqueror of that. He's not going to kill all these other versions of it, because we're going to see in the past Ramatut, and we're going to see
Hmm.
Immortus, I'm sure, in other versions. And I
Which
think there's
hopefully is
still,
the whole point of Loki season 2, which I would thoroughly appreciate.
yeah, maybe, yeah. Look, another thing that's weird is like the ants are kind of awkwardly left out of the movie. They make a big play to introduce them as these smart ants who can like
Problems.
replicate technology and solve problems and create their own colonies and stuff. And then they do that in the movie. They show you them like, oh, they were here the whole time, but for them it's been thousands of years. Look how advanced they are. But they still loyal to me for some reason. And then they're just gone again. And then the crucial moment they show up,
Can
like
I
the
tell you
fleet
what
and the
I
rest.
wanted from that?
What's that?
It would have been so dumb, but it kind of fits in with this movie. Like in the midst of that very, you mentioned it, Star Wars esque, like rebels storming, pick a base
Yeah.
with when he's like, where are these things coming from? Like, who's controlling these things? I wanted Hank Pym to say, I'm the Ant-Man, as like all the ants come over the hills. Because he is, like, he's literally the Ant-Man, right? Like,
He is.
if you that's one of the powers that Scott has, but has used less and less.
Yeah, Scott didn't do anything with ants. No one did except yeah, Scott Lang's pretty functionally useless compared to everyone else, because
Which
like
is the most frustrating part for me in terms of if when
he's the
looking at.
everyday guy. He's kind of hold it all together, and
But
like,
first
yeah,
film, he's a master thief and he's supposed to be like an incredible engineer and he like fixes the suit. And then in Civil War, like he's still an every guy, but he knows what he's doing. And then in Endgame, he's still like a competent human being. But in The Wasp and Quantumania, like he's an idiot.
he wrote a good book. He's making money.
I mean,
I
yeah,
guess. I mean, I don't know.
you just got to write a
Gotta go
book, I
retire.
guess.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, Hope's doing all the work, saving the world, and yeah, he just doesn't. I do like the idea, like the grandparents are working with the granddaughter and messing around with technology and giving her
Mhm.
see, like that's all totally believable. Like that's a cool family dynamic, and I love the scenes when it's just a family doing stuff. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
them acting, like, those are
And
strong
Judy
elements.
Greer doesn't get invited to Cassie's fake birthday
No,
at the
I guess
very end.
not.
Super
Yeah, but
weird.
maybe they're gonna recast her because they keep recasting Cassie every movie.
Who knows?
Weird.
But I
Yeah, but
guess
so the ants show up at the very end. They're OP as heck, and they don't really explain that. I feel like they're so OP that they would just become like Terminator units and take over the world. But I don't know.
with the ants, yes.
That's it. One other gripe. I am so done with hologram exposition. We saw it in Guardians of the Galaxy. You see it in Loki. You see it with the Ancient One in Endgame. Look at this line. This is the multiverse, and these glowing dots are bad. And it's like Kang literally does the same thing to show Janet. Like, oh god. And
Yeah.
it's like, really? Like, use your words or show me a thing. Like, turn on a computer. Like, I don't know, but I have powers. Like, it's like what they're trying to tell me, the viewer, is that Kang sat down before that conversation and created a PowerPoint presentation to show Janet what he's really talking about. And it's like, why would he do that? He's the conqueror. Like, I almost wish he had an assistant come into the room and
With
then do the presentation. Like, it would just be like, it's the same thing, but it would work so much better. And that would be the Rick and Morty
the
making fun of
character obsessed with holes brings in like an overhead projector
yeah.
and starts drawing on a sheet with a dry erase marker.
Man, yeah,
It's
exactly.
yeah, but that's part of those things are I don't want to gripe because I did enjoy the movie, but on draft 2 versus draft 4, like finalizing these things, how do we do this in the most effective way? And it's funny because key directors get burned out and whatever, but some of the Russo's projects were so tightly thought out, and all of the logic. Winter Soldier, in my opinion, still the best movie the MCU's ever made, and I'm
Yep.
hoping, kind of to wrap things up, the Marvels just got pushed by 4 months,
Yeah.
which is something that movies have not been delayed significantly.
Well, during the pandemic, like Eternals was delayed a year.
Yes, but those
Yeah.
were
So
different
some
times. So I'm hoping the
that's it.
creative element in this, where there seems to be a split amongst critics and audience, has not been something that the MCU has had to deal with.
Yeah,
So
they're dealing with it now for sure. I mean, there's also the story of like there may only be 2 Disney Plus shows for Marvel this year, which
Mhm.
is they're slowing down because like, oh boy, like what are we gonna do? And also, Blade had huge productions. The script was, depending who you believe, what reports you read, was kind of bad. So they got the director changes, and that's got it's missed its shooting date twice now. So it's not coming out this fall. And the Marvels, like you said, took its slot, so they have something in the fall because there's no Star Wars or Avatar, so they need something. But what else got pushed? Echo. I've heard rumors of like crazy production quality issues there, and that's delayed into oblivion too. And someone even suggested they may never come out. I don't believe that. I think it will come out, but they shot a bunch of it, and they're just like, well, I don't really know what to do with it. So it's like that should be coming out this year, but it's not. I don't think so.
The only
I'm
things
sure they'll have
listed
some.
are Secret Invasion and Loki. So
Was
Loki
Logan's coming out this year?
will
Yeah.
hopefully continue the ball moving forward with this multiverse stuff. Most what I would hope for moving forward is for all of the different projects, regardless of how they were introducing or exploring different avenues of the universe in space or quantum wise, we start to get some form of focus. Because by November, we will be, when the Marvels comes out, we will be halfway through, or film wise, I think so. No, well, how many
Phase 5,
films?
you mean?
Phase 5, yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
like,
they're so short now. So
right, we have less films, and next year, I think Thunderbolts is the end of Phase 4, at least from what's been announced. So, or end of Phase 5. So I'm
yeah.
hoping that we start to get some focus. We have an idea of where we're going specifically, because just throwing the multiverse saga in front of us doesn't.
So these delays and less amount of Disney Plus shows means like they're coming out, and the expediency, the quickening of these phase 5 and 6 means like we are rushing without enough content, and right now without enough quality, into a problem. Like they're trying so hard to get to Avengers 5, Fantastic Four, Avengers 6 that none of these characters are going to be fleshed out, and they still figured out there's a Spider-Man 4 in there somewhere. It's probably the summer after next, right? 2025.
Yeah.
But and Deadpool 3's in there too, which is X-Men really. And then yeah, so but it's all happening so fast. There's no development behind it all. So and we're also coming up against this problem where like Marvel Studios, Disney Plus are trying to get that big return to the box office because they're not getting it phase 4. Quality and pandemic combined. And then we're now at this problem now where they have all of these characters and they launch so many new characters. They do not have the production ability and quality to do them all justice. This is the problem I always feared when they acquired Fox and they started working with Sony and Universal stopped making Marvel movies. It's like you could have had 4 different studios doing a it's not a monopoly. There's competition in the market. Everyone's trying to make a better Marvel movie. Now, Marvel Studios has it all, and they launch all these characters. Look, you got Moon Knight, you got the Vision thing, and whatever happens to Wanda next, you got Miss Marvel. It's like none of these characters are getting follow up. Like, where's Moon Knight 2? Where's the? And it's like, where's like Blade should have been here a while ago. Like, why are we taking this long to get to Fantastic Four? And we're gonna get there, and it's Fantastic Four into Avengers 6. It's like, wait, where's the development of that family and the Doom and the Galactus of it all? And it's like, phase 7, 8, 9. It's like you're doing it too fast, but also you don't have enough time to do all these characters justice. It's like if you launch a character and they don't get a follow up a year or two later, what are we doing? Like you can't just like fire and forget and then just throw them all in an event movie every 2-3 years. It's like that doesn't work because unless these movies are all 9 out of 10s, right? They're not even close. So I don't know. It's concerning.
Well, we'll
And
have 3 phases in 5 years.
which is nuts. That's like a phase and a half of the
Yeah.
old days before they even had all these characters. So now they're doing more characters, less time. What?
Well,
With as the quality falls, it's like that's not
it's most interesting given the fact that I'm very curious if things are going to change. And while Bob Iger specifically was hands off until it came to, if rumors are to be believed, Ike Perlmutter wanting Kevin Feige
right.
outed, but we've had 3 films sequels announced because Disney needs the cash. I'd be very curious if things may change, because increasing quality ultimately is an increase in critical reception, audience reception, and box office. If the spacing of these things ultimately does happen, because I think everybody wins in that scenario, regardless of time frame from projects. That would be my hope. We talked about it with Shang-Chi. They greenlit a sequel, and then we have no idea what's going to be happening with that character. And it would be really disappointing for such fundamental characters in the Marvel Comics universe, specifically with the Fantastic Four and some of the X-Men, to just be throw-ins. So I'm hoping moving forward that that's not the case, but until we hear otherwise, there's not really a reason to believe that. So
Yeah, and I say this not knowing obviously what Guardians 3 will set up, even though it's the end of that story. Like, there's an Avengers movie coming up and an intergalactic threat. So
yes,
like something comes out of Guardians and the Marvels for sure. That's going to set up a third Marvels or Captain Marvel, and it's going to tie into whatever's going next with the Avengers. And but the other side of it is like you only have one chance to do the Avengers 5 movie with Kang right, and it's complicated, and you only have one chance to launch a Fantastic Four right. He can't come out and be 7 out of 10 films. Like the entire future of this franchise relies on that, and the same can be said for Deadpool 3. So these are all unknowns, and it's just you and I and everyone else is kind of like just worried because of what we saw happen the last 2 years. And it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And especially if DCU could start on the right foot and we're getting just better movies. There's so many epic franchise films coming out this year. Mission Impossible, another John Wick, like, all these things, and Transformers. And it's like these things are increasingly becoming more exciting versus the Marvel line. And that shouldn't be the case if they do it right? So then again, Ant-Man 3 just made $100 million with like a 48% of Rotten Tomatoes. So what do I know? But second lowest Rotten Tomato score for a Marvel film, but it's like nowhere near the bottom 5. So it's
not
you know
even
what I mean?
close. No, I could
Yeah,
name. There's. Oof.
I can name 10 movies probably worse than this. So
Yeah, probably.
it's a little more middle, but
It
yeah,
is certainly in the
whatever.
middle. Well, I mean, they've been successful in the middle for the most part. Not as successful as they want to be, as we talked about earlier.
Sure,
So
sure.
that will wrap up our spoiler conversation on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. God, I hope for simplicity, and if there is an Ant-Man 4. Next week will either be a review of Cocaine Bear or of The Legend of Vox Machina Season 2. It all honestly all depends on my scheduling. I have finished Legend of Vox Machina, so if I don't get a chance to go see Cocaine Bear, that will be what listeners have to look forward to next week. If you want to follow any of Rob Keyes' anything, you can follow him on Twitch at FailCube, as well as Rob_Keyes, Keyes on Twitter. Rob is involved with Screenrant. Did you buy any more websites?
Uh, NDA. No, not yet. I'm sure this year we're always looking to grow, but my focus this year. So last year, I think you were going to mention it. I put a lot of focus into helping some of our sister sites, Collider and CBR, because we were very fortunate enough to be able to hire during a tumultuous period when competitor sites were not able to hire, and so we hired new managing editors, editor-in-chiefs, and built out our staffs. And this year, my focus is on rebuilding Screenrant because it's our flagship site, it's our largest investment, and there's a lot of big things I'm wanting to do there. And I've already started launching a lot of new video initiatives and new channels, new teams. So, and in my own little Elite Avengers unit of like authority exclusive content, I've hired 2 or 3 people for that, and I'm still building it. So I have big plans this year on that stuff for Screenrant.
That is the site that I go to for all of my movie entertainment news and reviews. So you can go to screenrant.com. It's one of the reasons that I got into podcasting in general was because of Screen Rant Underground. So I'm here now talking to people that I met through Twitter on that. So it's crazy full circle. Thank you to Rob for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. We obviously spoke for a long time.
This is the longest episode ever. So editing this will be fun. I
like to
will
break records.
I will see you next week. Goodbye.